What's up, everybody? Welcome to Biockickz 3 Raw TV. We're going to try something a little bit different. So this is the first episode of the Biockickz 3 Raw podcast. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up the video, which is a recorded audio, but you just have like a picture on it, because it's very informational. Okay, it's very scientific, very informational. I want people to get the message and listen to it. And a lot of people listen to stuff when they're on doing their cardio or they're driving the car and stuff like that. So there really isn't much to watch of me and this individual, James, talking back and forth. But there's a lot of information I think people should hear and should listen to. So without further ado, this is the very first episode of the Biockickz 3 Raw podcast. I hope you guys enjoy, and we're out. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Biockickz 3 Raw TV. We are here today with James Angelillo. I've been trying to say his name for like 5 times now. Finally, hopefully I got it right this time. I didn't butcher it too bad. And James actually did his thesis. This was in May of 2017. He had actually sent me this
2017.
So that we could actually have a discussion about this. And he did his thesis on the effects of exogenous testosterone administration on blood DHT levels and prostate hyperplasia in male adult mice. The thesis was submitted to the faculty of St. Vincent College, correct?
Yes.
And this is for your Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, first of all, thank you for taking the time to do this. And I think it's super important to get the information out there to people that, I don't know what has happened between when I started doing steroids in 2017, but back then we were aware of the side effects. Back then, we respected what the steroids could do to you long term. And it seems like nowadays it's just a big joke and nobody really cares and they don't think it's real. But this is real, and your literature, your data here proves that it's real. So why don't you go ahead and give us a little background on what you did?
Well, basically we did a 6-week study, and we did it in male mice. And to do the study, we were using testosterone propionate, just because it's fast acting, as you know. So that way we can get it in within that 6-week, all those results, rather than say if we used a sustanon blend, if we used an enanthate, or if we used a cypionate, we couldn't possibly get the results in 6 weeks.
Okay, so now I'm not aware of how this works in the lab. So you obviously get testosterone propionate and you inject the mice with it, right? Is it like an everyday thing, every other day thing?
For this study, it was every other day.
Okay. So pretty much how a bodybuilder would take it, every other day.
Right, exactly. And we were doing it in dosage where we have a control group that was given nothing. They were completely clean. We had a low dose group, who I guess you can compare it to, if you compare it on a body weight scale, it would be similar to maybe 100 milligrams a week for a human being. Obviously, it's not the same thing because it's mice and humans. But then we had a moderate dose group, which would be like 200, and then a high dose group, which would be more like 400 milligrams a week.
Okay.
Something like a low dose bodybuilder would take.
Right. Yeah. I mean, 400 milligrams really isn't a low dose, but for the bodybuilders nowadays, that's like
it is.
They're like, oh, I'm off. I'm on 400 milligrams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now, what did you find? Obviously, you're looking at more of the DHT levels or the prostate hyperplasia.
We were looking a little bit at both. We were trying to make sure we had the time to look at both, because running all the tests to get the DHT took a long time. So what we were looking at was both the DHT levels and the prostate cell growth as they correlated to the dosages. And what we found was that it was kind of like, they call it a Michaelis-Menten curve, where the more you inject, the prostate grew, but it leveled off once you got to a certain point. So I guess the more you inject, it would still stay at that baseline. It would grow very little bit, but it wouldn't go exponential. It wouldn't grow exponentially anymore. It would just more or less level off.
It's like steroids with the body. I mean, there's a lot of guys nowadays taking more, and they're not necessarily gaining more. You know what I mean? It seems like even muscle mass-wise, you'll grow to a certain point. Even if you take more, it's just kind of like you'll get growth, but it's not like, that burst of growth you get with a certain dosage. And there's like a ceiling, it seems like, that your body just kind of taps out.
Exactly, because you only have so many receptors in the body that once all those are saturated, there's no place else for it to go. It's either converted or it's bound and useless. Okay.
So it was converted to DHT?
Right, that's what we found. Mostly it was converted to DHT.
Interesting. It didn't turn into estrogen. It didn't convert into estrogen and aromatize?
We didn't get to check those 2 levels. Those are something we would really love to check, but we just didn't have time to do it. But the amount that converted to DHT was just unbelievable. Okay,
so that would also be responsible for hair loss, the DHT receptors in the scalp. As you're taking more and more and more, I mean, so let's say someone was taking 200 milligrams. Theoretically, the guy taking 600 would lose hair faster than the person taking 200. So that's dosage dependent too, I guess.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, interesting. So I see. I never really paid attention as to how much hair I lost, as to how much I took. It's kind of a gradual thing. I didn't wake up one morning all of a sudden it was bald. You know what I mean? So it was like you took a certain amount and it kind of fell out a little bit along the way. So now, what you found was, the prostate hyperplasia, which is the creation of new cells. It's not, hypertrophy of the cells that are already there. Now you have these new cells, which technically you weren't born with to begin with. So you've kind of changed your genetics a little bit by causing this with the steroids. So after that's done, is there more of a chance to have issues because you have more, I guess that's not fibers, but tissue?
Yeah. Well, along the road, what happens is we were theorizing because in the developmental stages, the prostate grows using testosterone and DHT. So like say a fetus at 10 weeks, they're using primarily testosterone and DHT just to get that prostate development moving and to get it to grow.
Right.
So what happens is when we overload the system like we did here and we just kept throwing more and more testosterone in and more got converted to DHT, we were thinking that maybe because so much was binding to the receptors, it was actually causing a change in gene expression, which was causing then a release in growth factors. And growth factors, as the name implies, it's going to make tissue grow and develop. So that's what we're thinking is what caused the actual prostate hyperplasia.
So now, I mean, based on that, and of course, this would just be speculation or just throwing some shit around and see what sticks to the wall.
Right.
Is it possible that muscle fibers are the same way if you're overdosing the testosterone? I mean, I have never seen anything besides growth hormone that supposedly caused enough hyperplasia that, I mean, there was like a stretching routine back in the day that came out. I was like, oh, this causes hyperplasia. And like, if you do a fly, it causes it instead of a pec deck or whatever. Just random shit like that never really panned out. But do you think it's possible that actual testosterone or androgen use in general could cause that in muscle tissue also?
I think it might be able to. I mean, it's not really my field. I don't know much about it. But theoretically, if it's able to change gene expression and cause a release in growth factors, if those growth factors were to happen in skeletal tissue, why wouldn't they be able to grow too?
So now you've changed your genetics at that point because you now have more muscle fibers than you were born with. Interesting. So now, of course, after you take the testosterone away, the prostate shrinks up, but those fibers are still there. So the potential for issues, it goes exponentially, I assume.
Exactly.
Interesting.
What they're actually finding out now is they've done recent research looking specifically at prostate growth and prostate cancer, and they found that the cancer isn't so much active all the time, but it could be there when it starts growing. So it's just a matter of time before it starts to become active and start spreading.
So what you're saying basically, I mean, now let's back this up. So for somebody who is naturally high testosterone levels, okay, so let's say, we're just going to throw some numbers out again because, of course, we're just shooting the shit on this, but let's say somebody who has a normal 300 to 900 range would have the average possible hypertrophy and hyperplasia of the prostate. So let's say somebody had like a 13 or 14 or 1500 naturally. Would they be more susceptible, do you think, to having this happen than the person that was lower?
Yeah, most likely because it was like going back to the study. When we did the low dose group compared to the moderate dose group, there was a big increase. It almost doubled in size.
Oh, wow.
Even from the control group to the low dose group, it almost doubled in size, and that's equivalent to about 100 milligrams a week.
Jeez.
And 100 milligrams a week is not going to put you very far over the top.
Right. So now, I think we had actually talked about this before, where if instead of testosterone was being used, there was, I like to say, hormone replacement, quote unquote, taking place where they actually used Dianabol. I think it was 10 milligrams a day would replace androgens. They've supposedly used Anavar. Anavar is more of a DHT-based drug than anything else. But do you think that these things would not have as big effect? Like you'd be able to replace androgens with them and not have the same effect on the prostate?
You might be able to technically, but the only thing that might be an issue is the dose, because there have been studies that shown with Anavar specifically, it's safe up until about the 10 milligram mark, but once you go above that, which some people may need, that's when it starts getting the liver toxicity issues, the increased aggression, increased side effects from like DHT.
See, now that's interesting you say 10 milligrams, because I never read the study, and I didn't even know that there was a certain dosage used in those studies. But just about everything on the black market nowadays, people will send me like pictures and emails and shit. Say, hey, have you ever seen this? It's like oxandrolone or Anavar, which of course there's no Anavar being made anymore, but it's like a black market underground. Minimum is 20 milligrams on these capsules and tablets. They go all the way up to 50 milligrams, which again, sign of the times, more is better and it's not going to hurt me. But you're saying 10 milligrams, it was safe. Anything above that, you could possibly have problems. And these people are taking 50 to 100 milligrams a day. That's like 5 times the dosage or 10 times the dosage that would be safe for someone to take.
Yeah, it'd be pretty much the same thing as taking a Dianabol or an Anadrol tablet. It'd have the same effects in the liver at that point.
That's crazy. So a lot of people think it's safe. Well, it's safe because it's Anavar. Well, the dosage is also a lot lower too. If you have 2 milligrams of Anavar, as opposed to 50 milligrams of Anadrol, obviously if you're taking 50 milligrams of Anavar, it's going to have the same type of toxicities. Now, the study that you did was 100 milligrams a week. Now, let's just say, for shits and giggles, these guys that are taking like 2 to 3 grams of testosterone a week, how long would it be, do you think, before they started to see problems? Because I'm noticing the younger guys are the ones that are using these massive dosages, and they're not usually the ones that have the problem with the prostate. It's usually the guys that are in there 35, 40, 45, 50 years old that, as with age, I guess, in general, that can happen, the prostate hypertrophy. But, of course, if you're shoving androgens into your body, that could happen too. How long would it take before these guys, you think? I mean, in the mice, it was 6 weeks?
Yeah, the study was about 6 weeks long.
So if these guys are taking 3 grams worth of testosterone a week, within 6 weeks they could see a change in their prostate?
Theoretically, yeah, because, let me give you an example using myself. I'm on testosterone replacement therapy right now. I was diagnosed with low testosterone at 18 years old, unfortunately. And the doctor I went to had previously prescribed me 650 milligrams every 10 days.
That's a good dose. I mean, you're going to get big on that.
I never took 650 milligrams. At that point, I knew better.
Yeah.
I said, I'd rather than roll the dice, I'm just going to take 200 a week and just tell him I'm taking 650.
Yeah.
If he wants to hear that. So, but I got my prostate levels checked, my PSA levels, and looking at more of the size of it. And it looks like it grew a little bit, but not too much. And I was only taking 200 milligrams a week for the past 4 years.
Right.
So people taking 3 grams, 4 grams, and it's not like a one-time cycle. They're always cycling on and off, on and off. I was doing the same thing on TRT.
Right.
And mine still grew at 200 milligrams a week. So at 3 grams, it is going to be growth for sure in a short period of time.
And the only way to find out is a prostate exam, or is there a certain hormone level that can be checked to?
Honestly, I'm not 100% on that. Usually, they just check the PSA levels,
Right.
And my doctor goes based off of that if there's any issues with the prostate.
Right.
So that's most likely what they look at.
But it may not show up on somebody that's younger though. I mean, if they're blasted, a lot of guys. You know what? To be totally honest with you, I talk to a lot of them, and not many of them actually get blood work done. And I myself have gone long stretches of time where I had moved from up in New England down here, and like when you're finding a new doctor, it's very hard to find a doctor that you can say, "Hey, I'm doing this," and they're okay with it. So they just don't want to have the lectures. They don't want to get their balls busted. So what they do is they just don't get blood work done. Now, if in 6 weeks your prostate can take a turn for the worse and start to actually grow and build new cells and stuff, which obviously more cells, more chance for cancer. And these guys don't know it. It would be pretty tragic if it was too late by the time they found out, when they could have just, said, okay, well, I realize it's going to happen, so I'm not going to do this much, or whatever the case may be. So after the study, what's your main goal with this study to get messages out to people as far as?
Yeah, it's mostly just to get the message out. Hopefully somebody will see it in the research fields that would be able to further the research to see what exactly caused it. Because right now, the research is in an area where they're trying to see how to stop it and how to stop prostate cell growth, how to stop the prostate cancer. But I feel like it'd be more beneficial to know what causes it, because if you know what causes it, then you have a better chance at knowing how to stop it.
Right.
So that's mainly the goal, is to try to get it out there and try to encourage people to start doing research on it, trying to encourage doctors to start looking at this sort of stuff. Because I know some doctors for TRT, they don't even bother checking the prostate half the time.
Right. There's also a thing where they don't check thyroid T3. It's only a thyroid stimulating hormone. I just had my actual T3 checked, and I haven't had it checked the whole time I lived here because I was in Maryland, and my T3 is low. My thyroid stimulating hormone is fine, but my T3 is very low. My body's not converting for whatever reason it is. And a lot of these doctors, like, you can't walk in there and tell them, or most people won't walk in there and tell them, hey, I'm taking steroids. They just find out that's the the levels are off all over the place, and then they start freaking out, sending them for all these tests and stuff, trying to figure out what is wrong with them. Now, as far as like the prostate goes, you know, do you think testosterone would be the main culprit? I mean, because that's all you guys really researched, but I mean, your personal opinion.
And DHT, both of them combined, testosterone and DHT.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't really know what people are using for DHT anymore. We used to actually get DHT in a drug called Sten. That used to be available in Mexico, which was actually DHT in the vial itself. What about stuff like Proviron and stuff like DHT based, like Proviron and Mastron and stuff like that?
That stuff too is probably dose dependent, just like everything else. Because as long as it combines to that androgen receptor, there's still a chance to cause the gene expression and cause the release in growth factors. So
I guess the take-home message is here: like, use as little as possible to get the results you need. First of all, don't break the law. So if you're breaking the law, don't do that. But if you're aware this stuff is legal, then I guess less is better up to a certain point. And I think it's great that you did this so that people can be aware that if they still want to go ahead and blast 3 grams of gear, by all means, like, go for it. But realize, down the road you could be paying a price.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Once you start doing it, your prostate could grow a little bit, and you'll say, "Oh, it's just a little bit. It's fine. Nothing's wrong with me." Those could actually be cancerous.
Right.
And can lay dormant for years until they actually become active.
Interesting.
So it's like, are you really willing to roll the dice at that point?
Right.
Rather than you could get the same thing off of 400 milligrams a week as you could off of a gram, because not 1,000 milligrams of testosterone is binding to the receptors. You're not using all of that.
That's crazy. So
not
now,
a roll dice.
In your personal opinion, what would be the best way to go if you wanted to, like, if somebody's already gone ahead and blasted the grams of gear and stuff, and they see this and they're like, "Oh shit! Like, what if, like, I mean, I'll be the first one to admit, after 40 years old, I start looking at things when people say shit, and I'm like, oh no, I got to go to a doctor. Like, something might be wrong with me. Like, I start freaking out because I'm getting a little bit older. What do you think the best course of action would be? Would it be the PSA, prostate exam, or?
Yeah, definitely get all your blood work taken. Make sure everything's fine there. Get your PSA checked, and obviously come off as soon as possible if you're really worried about it. But instead of blasting and cruising, just stay on 200 milligrams if you're gonna do anything, and then bump it to 4 if you're gonna keep going. But if you're not and you worry about your health, I would say get all your blood work tested, get your PSA looked at. If they have other tests to see prostate cell growth, see the prostate size, get that taken too.
Awesome. Well, James, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to talk to you more about this stuff?
They can find me on Instagram at JPA_fit, or they can email me at jamespaulangelillo@gmail.com. That's probably hard to spell, so.
And it took me like 6 tries to get Angelillo down, so I don't. Yeah. So maybe the Instagram. Well, James, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for asking.
Keep me posted with any more updated information, because, like I said, I'm really kind of getting into the truth of what happens with this stuff. For myself, years and years and years, I blasted stuff, I did stuff, and I had no regard whatsoever. And my friends, because they were a little bit older than I was, that had been on for a long time, and now at 41, some of them are pushing 50, and I'd say most of them have complications. And it's traced right back to the stuff they did when they were younger, even though people don't believe it is absolutely true. And it's, like I said, it's everybody's choice to do what they want to do, but at least get the actual real information. So anything that you have further, man, please let me know.
There's one thing I just wanted to add, too, because we had talked about this over email, about using DHT inhibitors maybe to stop.
Like Proscar or Finastride, stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly. But the only problem with that is now, well, there's a few issues, because if you block the 5-alpha-1 reductase enzyme that converts to DHT, that also converts other substances into more substances. So you're blocking not just DHT conversion, you're blocking a bunch of things that are going on in the body. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I have the chart here. One of them is dihydroprogesterone, which are blocking, which converts to a whole slew of things. So it's like these things all serve a purpose in our body. They're there for a reason. And another thing that I'd like to add is they actually did more research on cancer specifically in the prostate, and they found that cancerous cells now have a way of still producing the hormone that it needs to grow. So it's like once you get to that certain point, there's nothing you can really do except try to get treated.
Even if you cut the testosterone out, it can produce what it needs. So essentially, has the cancer mutated into surviving? Is that kind of what's going on?
Exactly. Once it reaches a certain developmental stage, it can basically just make its own hormones and grow itself.
That's insane. Like, I mean, I guess the take-home message here is, don't use testosterone unless you need it, right? But we all know, most of the people watching this are not going to do that. It's, it is what it is. But guys, be careful out there.
Just don't go crazy with the dosages. You don't need to. There's no point.
I mean, I agree. But when I say and you say don't go crazy, they're like, you're right. I'll stay at 2 grams. Right. Like, oh man, James, thank you so much. And that other stuff that like you were talking about, it counteracts things that we need in our body. Anytime you're jacking up one level of something else is going to get thrown off. I mean, even like when you dehydrate yourself, aldosterone gets produced, where it's like the antidiuretic hormone. I mean, everything, your body has checks and balances to try to stay alive. Anytime you're jacking something out or depleting it, the body basically looks at it as it's not going to survive. It's dying. For whatever reason, whatever's supposed to be there is not being produced. And it has all these checks and balances to try to stay alive. And it doesn't realize that you're doing it on purpose, and it's going to react that way.
Right. And they also have where if say you do block DHT, if you block that enzyme from working, then you might upregulate the aromatase enzyme and have more estrogen now.
Right.
So
which
now
is a whole nother problem
with that too.
so now you're on like a Arimidex on top of like finasteride or Proscar or whatever.
And then you get more sex hormone binding globulin after that.
Right.
So it's like wheel just keeps spinning.
I mean, there are a lot of bodybuilders that will take one thing, and then there's like a slew of other drugs. Like, I don't understand. Maybe back in the day, because we took lower dosages, we didn't need other stuff. Like, there was no such thing as a Arimidex when I started. There was Novadex if you needed it, but it was like you take one tablet of Novadex 4 weeks before a show, and that was it. And now they have stuff like cabergoline and stuff. I'd never heard of it. Didn't know what it was, because they're jacking things up so high. Usually the trend, it jacks up their prolactin levels, and I'm like, prolactin? I'm like, what the hell? I didn't even know what it was. And people are like, well, how much cabergoline do you suggest? I'm like, I don't even know what it is. It took me a while to figure out Arimidex, letrozole. None of those things existed or were used in bodybuilding until people really started jacking up the dosages. So I think that, a sign of the times is more is better, and to keep pushing it. And I think that eventually, what's going to happen is someone's going to get hurt, and they're going to tell the truth about it. It's not going to be like, oh, well, he choked on a piece of chicken, or, he had a heart attack. It's like, okay, what really led to this person's death? And they're going to find out. And then even then, I'm not sure people would believe it, to be honest with you.
Well, it's like things now. When things happen, that everybody in the bodybuilding that's using steroids, it's the last thing they want to blame.
Right. They're like, he was in a car accident. What is a car accident? He had a heart attack. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Cool, James. Well, thank you so much, man. Like I said, anything you get updated, please let me know, and we'll have you back on, bro.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for letting me get the message out there. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Take care of yourself. We'll talk to you soon, man.
All right. Have a good one.
Take care.